Sergeant Eric Cole, a combat medic with the 3rd Infantry Battalion, woke up to the sound of a loud alarm. Redcon 1. All units, take up combat positions. I repeat, Redcon 1, boomed the voice over the loudspeaker. Outside the window, it was dark, but not nighttime dark. The sun should have risen already. Instead, the sky was gray and bloody, as if covered in ash. Cole, covered in sweat, threw off his blanket and grabbed his first aid kit and his M4. His leg still hurt from an old wound in Afghanistan, but his reflexes worked better than adrenaline. What the hell is going on? Everyone in the hallway was rushing around like a beehive before a storm. Lieutenant Mason shouted into his radio. We have contact on the western perimeter. Looks like contamination. I repeat, contamination. Eric frowned. In his mind, the word infection meant a chemical attack or a leak. But no. Half a minute later, 2 soldiers were dragged in. One of them, Private Williams, was biting his arm and making a gurgling sound. He was pinned to the table with a groan. His eyes were cloudy gray, as if dusty from the inside. Is it drugs? Eric asked as he injected him with a sedative. No. He attacked our patrol. The other soldier croaked. He killed Corporal Jenkins. And then, he started eating his face. 8 minutes later, Williams stopped. His heart had stopped. He wasn't breathing. His pupils weren't responding. Clinically dead, Eric thought. But 2 minutes later, the body began to twitch. Then it began to breathe. And then it stood up. Williams lunged at the paramedic, biting his neck before Eric could shoot. Everyone was screaming. Chaos. Gunfire. Army assault troops fired indiscriminately. Eric grabbed the first aid kit, dragged the wounded corporal behind the armored door, and pressed the lockdown alarm button. The world began to collapse. This isn't a disease, Eric thought, squeezing the tourniquet on the wounded man's artery. This is war, but not the kind we've seen before. He turned on the tactical map. It showed red dots all along the southern coast. New outbreaks. One in Dallas, one in Houston, one already in San Antonio. And then the screen went blank. The connection was lost. All that remained was darkness, syringes, and the sound of strange teeth grinding against the metal behind the door of the medical station. Sergeant Eric Cole stood with his back against the door of the medical station. His M4 was loaded, and his first aid kit was scattered on the floor next to the corporal's dead body. Or what used to be the corporal. On the other side of the steel door, the infected were already screaming. The metal was giving way. There were more and more of them. Screams, roars, blow after blow. Each one made Cole's brain contract into a ball of fear. They're not human, he whispered. There's something else. Cole covered his face with a bandana, hoisted the wounded private onto his shoulders, and took one last look at the medical station. I'm not a doctor here anymore. Now I'm just a soldier. He blew up the rear emergency door with C4, which he had hidden long ago for emergencies. Boom. The explosion raised a cloud of dust, and Cole rushed across the backyard, dragging the private behind him. The infected were howling behind him. One of them, naked to the waist and covered in blood, was already flying at him. Cole fired a burst, 3 bullets into the torso, with no effect. Head. He remembered hearing from the radio technician. He aimed, bang. The infected man's head exploded, and his body fell like a doll. The base was lost. The armored personnel carriers were burning. Several tanks tried to break through the infected, but were stopped by the crowd. They tore through the armor like film. The air hummed with black helicopters, but they didn't land. They just patrolled. Why aren't they evacuating us? Cole shouted, pressing himself against the wall of the bunker and transmitting coordinates over the radio. But there was no answer. The wounded soldier was suffocating. Cole tried to inject him with morphine, but the wound was too deep. The infection had entered his bloodstream. Don't leave me. Sergeant. He whispered. I'm here. Until the end, whispered Cole, holding his hand. A minute later, there was silence. The soldier died. Half a minute later, he stirred. But Eric already had his gun in his hand. One shot. Silence. Somewhere amid the flames, he heard a radio. Someone's voice. "This is Sergeant Jacobs, 5th Company. We are retreating to the Grayson Bridge." "I repeat, Grayson." Medics respond. Eric pressed the button. "Sergeant Cole, I'm on my way." "One." "No, not alone," he heard a voice nearby say. 3 soldiers emerged from the shadows, burned, wounded, but alive. One of them was a female mechanic with torn overalls and shock in her eyes. Another was a machine gunner with a dislocated arm. The third was Lieutenant Mason, with a bandage on his head. "Let's get ready. And stick together," Mason said. Cole nodded. "It'll get worse ahead. But we're not dead yet." The crackle of the radio accompanied every step. The column of 4 soldiers moved through a narrow alley, past burned-out cars, collapsed walls, and the bodies of civilians, mutilated, their mouths open in frozen horror. Cole led the way. His M4 was loaded again. Behind him was a wounded machine gunner, whom he supported with his left shoulder. Lieutenant Mason covered the rear, while Mechanic Jess tried to make contact on the radio. "The Grizzly base has been destroyed," Mason whispered. "But no one can explain why. The Pentagon is silent. The units are out of contact. This isn't just a collapse. It's a complete system failure." "Maybe we've just been abandoned," Jess muttered. "Like a rock in '03. Cole remained silent. It was more important to him to keep the machine gunner on his feet than to discuss conspiracy theories. When they reached the bridge, reality hit them like a blow to the temple. The quarter-mile-long bridge was jammed with military equipment and hundreds of infected. Part of the asphalt was destroyed. Tanks were smoking on both sides. Gunfire could be heard from the center. Someone was still holding out. "It's a trap," Jess whispered. "It's our only way out," Mason replied. "And we're going." Cole stared into the chaos. Among the infected, he saw something strange. One of the infected was standing and watching, not whining, not growling, just watching. His eyes weren't cloudy and intelligent. "Mason, look at 11 o'clock, Cole whispered. "That one. He's not like the others." The lieutenant took out his binoculars. "Damn, you're right. And he's a radio. He has a military tactical radio on his chest. They can use our equipment? Maybe they're intelligent mutants. The result of an experiment? A virus that's evolving?" Cole gripped his weapon. "I saw them tear through armor like paper. If they understand, we're deep in shit." When they reached the bridge, reality hit them like a blow to the temple. The quarter-mile-long bridge was jammed with military equipment and hundreds of infected people. Part of the asphalt was destroyed. Tanks were smoking on both sides. Gunfire could be heard from the center. Someone was still holding out. "It's a trap," Jess whispered. "It's our only way out," Mason replied. "And we're going." Cole stared into the chaos. Among the infected, he saw something strange. One of the infected was standing and watching, not whining, not growling, just watching. His eyes weren't cloudy. They were intelligent. "Mason, look at 11 o'clock, Cole whispered. "That one. He's not like the others." The lieutenant took out his binoculars. "Damn, you're right. And he has a radio. He has a military tactical radio on his chest. Can they use our technology? Maybe they're intelligent mutants. The result of an experiment? A virus that's evolving?" Cole gripped his weapon. "I saw them tear through armor like paper. If they understand, we're deep in shit." An explosion on the left, from a nearby helicopter that crashed onto the bridge. Flames engulfed half of the crossing. The other infected turned their heads and ran toward the source of the explosion. "This is our chance," Mason shouted. While they're distracted, the team rushed forward. Cole covered their backs. The machine gunner limped. Jess shouted into the radio, demanding an air strike, even though she knew no one would answer. Halfway to the bridge, the infected turned back. Faster, Cole yelled. They've spotted us. The machine gunner stumbled and fell. Cole stopped. Don't leave me, Sergeant. Hang on, damn it. He grabbed him and pulled him along. Mason and Jess were already behind the truck that blocked the entrance to the tunnel after the bridge. Cole fell down next to them, threw the wounded man over, and managed to jump over himself. A moment later, a grenade explosion behind them threw several infected back. Silence. Heavy breathing. For survived. Another group was waiting in the tunnel, soldiers in black uniforms without insignia. Snipers. No identifying marks. Were you led here? One of them asked. We're from Grizzly Base. We were told. Grizzly has been destroyed. The entire area is blocked off. You must leave the territory, or you will remain here forever. Who are you? Mason protested. You are not regular troops. That's above your clearance level, Lieutenant. The commander in black replied dryly. Cole stepped forward. We're not test subjects. We're people. And if you know something, tell us. The infected can't be stopped, and lies won't help anymore. The commander was silent, but something dangerous appeared in his eyes. After a brief argument, the soldiers in black allowed Cole, Mason, Jess, and the wounded machine gunner to pass through the checkpoint. They disappeared into a tunnel that led deep underground. Above their heads were multi-ton concrete vaults, fading emergency lights, the smell of oil, blood, and something else, something synthetic, alien. Cole was the last to go. Something in him was unsettling, an instinct honed by years of service. These blacks were silent, acting in unison without emotion, like operators from secret programs, not from the army. After half an hour of descent, they emerged into a bunker that was unlike a typical military base. Everything here was new. Modern terminals built into the walls, automated doors, digital panels, and surveillance cameras. Everywhere. In the center of the room, a man in a white uniform was waiting for them. No epaulets, just a badge with the inscription. Dr. Elias Morton, Aegis Project Coordinator. I don't have time for emotions, Morton began coldly. Your unit has been destroyed. Grizzly has been wiped out. Texas is lost. But you came here. And now you need to know whether you want to or not. What is the Aegis Project? Jess asked sharply. Aegis is an antivirus. Protection. A shield. But before we created the shield, we created the spear. Cole clenched his fist. You created the virus? Morton looked at him calmly. No, we recreated it. It's not human in origin. The first samples came from vials found in Alaskan glaciers in 2022. The genetic code was unnatural. We thought we could study it, understand it. But someone inside the project decided to release it. Deliberately. Sabotage. Mason whispered. Someone wanted this to happen? Yes. We don't know who. But we suspect it's not just a conspiracy within the country. It's a bigger game. Cities are falling. Morton pressed a button on the terminal. A map of the United States appeared on the hologram. Red dots pulsed. New York, the epicenter of the infection. Los Angeles, lost. Philadelphia, Houston, Chicago, contact lost. In 12 hours, the virus will reach the Pentagon. In 18 hours, Washington. This isn't just a pandemic. It's a war. And we're losing. Cole stared at the map, his jaw clenching in helplessness. He remembered holding the child who didn't survive in his arms. How he closed the eyes of a comrade who had suffocated in his own blood. And now they were telling him it was an experiment? You have a choice, Morton continued. Stay here or help. There's a shipment. It needs to be delivered to the outpost in Denver. It's a sample of Aegis. An antivirus. It can't be lost. And how many of those who have already transported your cargo have survived? Mason asked indignantly. None. Damn. Cole was silent. I'll go, he said suddenly. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a strategist. But I saw how it started. And I don't want to be just a cog in your lie anymore. I want to make a difference. Even if I die along the way. Mason looked at him for a long time. If we go together. Jess nodded. Even the wounded machine gunner raised his hand. Morton just nodded briefly. You are our last chance. The cargo will be ready in an hour. An hour and a half after the decision was made, the armored MATV truck was already roaring its engine on the surface. The sky was gray, the air smelled of smoke, and the ground was still shaking from the night's explosions. Cole sat behind the wheel. Jess was on his left with her carbine at the ready, and Mason was in the back with the machine gunner and a small case hidden under the seat. Inside was an ampoule of Aegis. This wasn't just a delivery. It was a mission with a chance of rescue. Behind them, the entrance to the bunker exploded in accordance with the total destruction protocol. No one would ever return there. If we die, this thing must not fall into enemy hands, said Cole, without taking his eyes off the road. What do you mean? Jess shuddered slightly. I mean that if necessary, I'll destroy it myself. And myself along with it. Driving through abandoned villages, they saw mangled bodies, helicopter wreckage, overturned cars. There were almost no people, and those who were there were better off dead. At the entrance to the town of Erickson, a distorted voice suddenly came over the radio. Cole, can you hear me? They're watching. We saw you. Don't trust anyone, not even those who are alive. The connection was lost. Cole broke out in a sweat. What was that? Jess kept her finger on the trigger. That infected guy? From the bridge. He knew my name. He spoke. Consciously. On the outskirts of Erickson, the road was blocked by cars and barricades. It looked like a National Guard unit was defending the area. But everything had been dead for a long time. We'll go around the left side through the woods, Cole said. But when the car pulled off the road, there was an explosion. A wheel was blown off. The body shook. Mine, Mason shouted. 2 people fell from a tree, not infected. People with red armbands, weapons in their hands. One shouted, Casey, get down. Quickly. Cole only had time to shout. Cover me. The explosion of a grenade threw one of the attackers to the side. Jess opened fire. Mason pulled out a machine gun and shot the other one. But another one appeared behind them, almost point blank. And then Cole, without thinking, pulled out a knife and threw it straight into the attacker's throat. The man gasped and fell. His heart was beating wildly. Blood dripped onto the asphalt. They knew what we were carrying, Jess whispered. And now we know that Aegis isn't just for us. Someone is hunting for it. The truck couldn't move any further. The wheel was destroyed, the body damaged. They were left in the forest with a case, a few magazines, and a 5-hour walk to the outpost in Denver. We'll leave the car and go on foot, said Cole. Otherwise, they'll find us like they found these attackers. What if they're not the last ones? Asked the machine gunner, holding his wounded leg. Then, it's either us or them. There won't be any others. They gathered their equipment, checked the case, and set off through the forest toward the city, which was already burning on the horizon. Behind them were burned roads. Ahead of them was a hellish kilometer yet to be traversed. The trek through the forest was silent and exhausting. Every crack of a branch made Cole's shoulders tense, and his finger reached for the safety catch. Jess walked ahead, checking the route, Mason behind, the machine gunner limping but keeping up. The smoking truck was left behind. Ahead were the silhouettes of concrete boxes and skyscrapers, wrecked cars, and dead windows. Denver greeted them silently. Let's barricade ourselves in the nearest building, whispered Cole. Mason needs a bandage. They entered the abandoned hospital. Inside, it smelled of mold and old blood. The operating room was destroyed, but one of the wards was fairly clean. I'll check the perimeter, Jess said and disappeared into the hallway. Cole quickly unpacked the medical kit. Mason was holding his leg. Shrapnel from a mine had pierced his muscle. Hold on. This is going to hurt, Cole said. No, just give me a shot, and I'll be running marathons. If we survive, I'll sign you up for the Olympics. Cole worked like a machine. He sterilized the wound, removed the shrapnel, and stopped the bleeding. Mason's gaze slowly cleared. You saved me again. That's the 5th time? He whispered. Looks like you owe me a drink. If there's anything left to drink after this. Suddenly, there was a click somewhere in the hallway. Cole immediately raised his carbine. Jess returned to the ward quietly. Someone's here. Not infected. A human. Who are you? A voice rang out. A man in a medical gown with a holster on his hip emerged from the shadows. Clean-shaven, his eyes sharp but tired. His fingers held a weapon, but they didn't tremble. A professional. I'm Dr. Miranda, former CDC. You're not ordinary survivors. Cole and Jess exchanged glances. We're from the Army. A medic, a mechanic, a wounded officer, and a machine gunner. We're carrying a case with a sample of Aegis. Miranda's eyes widened. You have no idea what you're holding. It's not just a vaccine. It's proof. Evidence of how it all began. Tell us, Cole said coldly, protecting the case. Miranda sat down, holding his head. Aegis isn't a vaccine. It's a modifier created in an attempt to control the strain. But it mutated. We tested it on volunteers. And they didn't just die. They changed. Are you saying the government knew? Jess whispered. Not only did they know, they promoted a program called Project Atonement. Aegis was supposed to create a new breed of soldier. Indestructible. Controllable. And something went wrong. Cole felt his fingers trembling. Everything went wrong. They lost control. And they tried to destroy everything before anyone found out. But you found out. And you're carrying it with you. Before Miranda could finish, the sound of engines could be heard from the street. Jeeps. Several of them. Again, people with red armbands. They were combing the area. They know we're here, Cole said. This isn't just an escape anymore. It's a war for the truth. Then we'll break through, Jess replied. And we'll take Aegis where the world will find out. Where? Mason asked. Cole clenched his fist. To the main command base. NORAD headquarters. There are still people there who can tell the truth. If they're alive. Cole tightened the strap on his shoulder, checked his weapon, and picked up the case with Aegis. Outside the window, enemy vehicles with red armbands were already surrounding the block. Somewhere below, near the entrance, there was a dull thud as a vehicle rammed the barricade. There's no time, Mason whispered, pressing his rifle to his chest. If we want to get out of here alive, we have to act now. There's a back entrance, said Dr. Miranda. Through the morgue. It leads to the underground garage. We can get out that way. Cole nodded. Okay. Jess, cover us. I'll take the case. The rest of you stay between us. They moved through the narrow corridors, leaving behind wards with broken windows, empty beds, and spilled medical supplies. The fear was palpable, as if the very oxygen in the air was contaminated with panic. The hospital basement resembled a scene from a horror movie. Shabby walls, cold tiles, the pungent smell of formaldehyde. The flashlights flickered with every step. And then there was silence, breathing death. When Cole opened the garage door, he sensed they were there. Infected, many of them, and those who were already, not quite stupid. One of them, the same smart, infected guy from the bridge, was standing in the center of the garage. His eyes were completely black, but not empty. They were aware. He looked straight at Cole. Aegis won't save you. Your truth is their lie. And he smiled. Back, Cole shouted. Too late. The infected rushed forward. The first fell from Jess's bullet. The second from a grenade thrown by Mason. Cole covered Miranda, who was already firing his pistol. But the smart one didn't even move. He just watched. His subordinates were dying, but he wasn't. Cole gritted his teeth, took aim, and shot him in the head. The bullet stopped in midair. No, not literally, but it didn't hit the skull. It hit a carbon helmet. It wasn't a mutant. It was a human. Damn, he's wearing armor. Jess screamed. He's not just infected. He's one of us. Genetically modified, partially infected, controlled, Miranda whispered. Project Atonement. Test subject. Cole didn't think. He threw a smoke grenade, grabbed the case, and rushed through the door. Everyone else followed him. Bullets flew overhead. Screams. Metallic sounds. One of the bullets grazed the case. Cole almost fell, but managed to stay on his feet. A voice called out from behind them. You won't make it. Your journey will end at NORAD. He knows where we're going. How? They made it to the surface. Denver lay before them, destroyed but still alive. Several civilians with machine guns waved at them from a fortified bus. It was clear that resistance still existed. What now? Jess asked breathlessly. Cole turned to her. In his hands was a scratched but intact case. Now we go to NORAD. We have to get to the bottom of this and expose this damn lie to the world. The column of armored vehicles in the city had disappeared. Instead, there was chaos, fire, crowds of infected people, and organized actions by armed infected people. They acted like trained infantry. Cole, Jess, Mason, and Dr. Miranda made their way through the devastated neighborhoods, zigzagging between streets, avoiding large squares and main avenues. We're not going to make it to NORAD on foot. It's miles away, and we're almost out of ammunition, Mason said, wiping sweat from his forehead. I have to deliver this case. It's not just data, it's the revelation. The whole program. The beginning phase. The evidence, Cole replied, clutching the case as if it were his last hope. On the outskirts of the city, near an abandoned police station, the group decided to take a break. There were broken barricades, corpses of the infected, and one surviving cop with a serious chest wound. Cole rushed to him. Jess covered him. My name is Becker. They aren't all dead. They're controlled. Money, pharmaceutical companies. NORAD is the last thing left uninfected. The cop choked on his own blood. Cole took out a syringe kit. He tried to stabilize Becker's heart, but it was too late. While Cole was working, bullets hit Mason and the machine gunner. The latter died instantly. It was an ambush. Mason, Jess screamed, returning fire. 3 infected individuals in exoskeletons, armed with NATO-style weapons, emerged from the darkness. Their movements were jerky but coordinated. One was even talking on a radio. They weren't feral. They were part of some kind of structure. Cole dragged Mason behind the car. Blood was flowing from his neck. He only had time for a few words. When you get there, tell them that I had no regrets. Mason died, clutching Cole's hand. Cole raised his rifle. Together with Jess, they broke through the fire, taking down one of the smart, infected. One grenade explosion, and the enemy soldier was blown to pieces. Miranda, clutching the case to her chest, ran silently behind them. They managed to capture a police car. The old Ford Interceptor was still drivable. Cole threw the briefcase into the back seat, glanced at Mason, and pressed the gas pedal with a heavy heart. Denver was burning behind them. Ahead lay the road to NORAD. Silence reigned in the car. Only the roar of the engine and heavy breathing could be heard. Cole looked in the rearview mirror. The burning horizon, once a city, reflected in his eyes. They didn't die in vain, Cole said. No, Jess replied. And we'll prove it. We'll destroy everything they hid. The road to NORAD was hell. The old police interceptor fought its way through the chaos, destroyed bridges, mined tunnels, columns of refugees, shootouts between different factions, the infected, and something new, drones patrolling the highway. But Cole was behind the wheel, and more focused than ever. They don't want us to get there. This is all coordinated. Doesn't it bother you that the drones have the emblem of a private security company, not the army? Jess asked, shooting at a reconnaissance drone. Everything is alarming. But I saw those reports in the case. The program was codenamed Hades. The virus has been tested since 2019. When they pulled up to the main gate of NORAD, it was already under fire. Not infected. People in Special Forces uniforms, but not from American units. Their insignia were worn away. Their eyes were glassy. Fire. A voice rang out from the wall of the complex, and it all began. Cole turned the steering wheel. The Ford almost overturned. Bullets pierced the car. Cole pulled Miranda and Jess into a ditch. A little further away was a destroyed pickup truck with a grenade launcher in the back. This is our chance. Jess crawled forward and aimed the barrel. Boom. The rocket hit one of the enemy armored vehicles. It flew into the air. The walls of NORAD opened. A security unit rushed out, real military personnel. Cole grabbed the case and rushed to the gate. NORAD greeted them with cold steel, armed glances, and long minutes of checks. They took the case. They took Miranda too. She was taken to another wing. Cole wanted to protest, but he was pinned against the wall. Your word will be taken into account. But first, detoxification and interrogation. You just fought your way through half the apocalypse. Now let us verify who you really are. A few hours later, sitting in a windowless room, Cole saw the general. Old, gray-haired, with a look that had seen too much. I know what you did, and I saw what you brought, said the general. So you knew? Not just knew. I'm the former curator of the Hades program. We thought we had it under control. And then, someone decided to test it in real life. Without warning, without permission, the test turned into a disaster. Cole clenched his fists. Millions of people. You call that a test? The general nodded. His voice trembled. And now we're all paying for it. But your information is a chance. A chance to destroy those who are still in charge. For a moment, everything was quiet. But then, alarm. Part of NORAD is infected. One of the guards opened the internal gates. The virus is already inside. The general handed Cole a key card. Section D-17. The server is there. Download the data. Broadcast it. If you can, show the world the truth. They fear that more than bullets. Cole, armed with an automatic rifle and a case of data, fought his way through smoke, automatic gunfire, and screams. NORAD, once an impregnable bastion of U.S. defense, was no longer safe. All systems were partially disabled, evacuation corridors were blocked, and half the staff was infected or dead. Behind him were Jess, with her torn bulletproof vest, and the wounded Miranda, whom they had pulled out of the lab. She was barely breathing, but she was holding on, not through strength, but through hatred. The server room is on the left, under the airlock. Jess shouted, and Cole pressed the panel with all his might, inserting the card the general had given him. The airlock opened. Behind it was a room with servers that were still working. Cole opened the case. Inside was a storage device and a special console with a biometric key. Damn, it won't open without the general. You have his hand, Miranda whispered quietly, pointing to his pocket. Cole pulled out a fragment of the scanner, which already had the general's fingerprint on it. He had given himself up, knowing he was going to die. Scanning. Loading. The live broadcast began. On the screen was the Hades logo, followed by video footage of virus testing, reports of successful infection in Indonesia, secret negotiations in Latvia, and names of the famous and powerful. All of this went to a live satellite channel, not only to the military, but also to the open network. Someone will definitely see it. The sirens sounded at full force. The infected were already approaching the server room door. One of the traitor soldiers threw a grenade. Jess caught it and threw it into the corridor. You have to go, she said, wounded again. No, we're all going together, Cole replied firmly. He threw Miranda over his shoulder, shot the nearest zombie, and ran with Jess to the exit. Fire was burning beneath their feet, concrete was falling from above, and the server room was collapsed behind them. But the signal had been sent. When the explosion shook the inner tunnel of NORAD, the 3 survivors fell into the emergency evacuation shaft elevator. The ascent to the surface took several long minutes. The sky was black, but not empty. Looking up, Cole saw drones with the logos of independent media and satellite channels. "Did you send it?" Jess whispered. "Yes. The world knows now." A data leak from NORAD confirmed the involvement of high-ranking officials in the Hades program. The U.S. president has officially denied responsibility. There are protests in several countries. In others, there is panic. But some people were no longer hiding. People began to unite, not only against the zombies, but also against those who created them. The last entry in Cole's journal. "I didn't know what I was living for until now. But today, I chose who I wanted to be. Not just a doctor, but a human being. I didn't save everyone, but at least I saved the truth. And now we have another chance, even if it's our last."